grandmasters have many ways to dominate their opponent in chess. Today, we will learn one of the most important techniques in this game with Alexander Alekhine. He was playing Evanson, and the game started with this kind of Philidor defense with knight bd7, and after bishop c4, yes, bishop e7, trying to short castle and continue with the game, right? Short castle, and in this position there is of course many ways to continue here with white. It's possible to play just rook e1, it's possible to play with queen e2, h3, a4. There is many different ways, but in most of those ways, white should keep the tension in the center. You should not play d5, you should not play d5. Why? Because after playing d5 and d5, and this is the way actually that the game continued, you are giving me the space for free. Now you don't have that tension. I wasn't happy taking here, and now I have many more squares for my pieces. The game continued with bishop g5, and now of course I have to decide the way I want to develop my pieces, right? And the most obvious problems in my position are right now the queen and the bishop. Right now, the queen is on an open file, and it's kind of clear that this queen is going to be placed on e2 in the future, so I have to solve the problem with my queen, and the best way to do it is by playing c6. With c6, I managed two things. I have this beautiful square in c7 for my queen, where I will be defending the pawn on e5, which will give a lot of freedom to my knight on d7, and also I'm taking away squares for this guy on c3 that now is much more unhappy, right? Also, well, I have some ideas with b5 if white is allowing us to do it. That's why white tried to play a4 directly just to avoid b5, and now we're going to continue with queen c7. As you can see, as I told before, now we are defending the pawn and we are able to move our knight somehow to c5. That's why, well, white is simply gonna defend e4, queen e2, defending the pawn and just getting the queen away from the d file. Nobody likes queens on open files, right? And now, how do we continue here with the position? Just knight c5. And as you can see, slowly all of our pieces are getting much better squares than white is getting. Well, our queen here is impossible to attack. This queen here, somehow I can find some ways to start annoying the queen. This guy doesn't have squares, all my pieces have squares. This guy here doesn't really want to take on f6, so he's not doing so much on g5, and actually it's very possible that after h6 you will have to find some weird square for the bishop, such as h4, which doesn't look like a great diagonal for the bishop. And if you come back to e3, then this guy is hanging. If you come back to c1, it's very sad. So all the pieces in black position have much better coordination than white's. Here, white tried to play knight e1, just trying to change some piece here with knight d3 and trying to maybe bring some action to the game with some f4, which I don't really love it, but since the position is already quite sad for white, it's probably a way to find some fun in the game. And now Alexander Alekhine continued with knight e6, attacking the bishop here, also trying to find some beautiful square on d4. Here, white tried to come back to control some of the squares, but of course, as black, we are happy to play knight d4. We are not worried at all about bishop d4, e d4, since, well, basically we are getting now the pair of bishop for free, and this is something to celebrate in such a position. So white didn't have too much else to do than bringing the queen back to d1, and now, and as I said before, queen is on an open file. What do? Well, we simply start aiming at the queen, rook d8. So white doesn't really want to move the queen again now, so that's why Evanson tried to play knight d3 to blockade this file, this d file. The problem when you put some blockade with some piece in an open file is that actually if your opponent starts to control that file and then exchange that piece, you will probably not have time to control the file yourself, and you will lose the control over this file, and this is exactly what happened in this game. Now, well, probably one of the most annoying pieces for white is this guy right here that is directly looking at the pawn on f7. Probably white next move is gonna be f4. So if we actually take that in consideration, and we also see that this bishop on c8 doesn't really have a beautiful square to go, bishop e6 is actually a very normal move, right, to play. We simply want to exchange those guys, knight takes, and now we see how our rook is already looking at the queen. And also we have some idea right now, which might be trying to play c5, but we only play this move if we are actually sure we can put the pawn on c4. This way we'll gain much more advantage with the space in the position, and it's true we are gonna create some weaknesses on d5 and b5, but it's not so clear that white is going to be able to use it. The game continues with queen c1. White is trying to get away from this open file, and now, as I said before, when your opponent has some piece in an open file, if you quickly try to control the file, it's not so easy for your opponent to battle this. And after rook d7, white tried to play f3 just to defend this guy, and also trying to get away from these jumps on g4 and simply rook a d8. So we already have almost all of our pieces improved. Probably our worst piece right now is this guy right here, because it doesn't have so many jumps anymore, but we are going to solve that quite soon. Bishop f2, and okay, it would be lovely to improve our queen, but the truth is that there is not so many squares to go. This guy is already controlling many squares. This guy is not easy to improve, but this guy right here has a lot of power in the position, and this guy right here is our enemy right now because he's blocking our open file. What do? Simply change the piece that does nothing for the piece that is annoying us. 92, and we are actually more than happy to play c5, as we said before, to play c4 and trying to gain even more space in the position. b3 came, and now knight to f4. After b3, the key and why we wanted to force b3 was because after all of these changes, we are going to place our bishop on c3. This means that probably white is going to be forced to play c3, and when white does that, he will want to have the pawn on b2, so this guy here is not going to be weak. With the pawn on b3, this guy here, after playing c3, is going to be weak, and this guy is also going to be weak. So after bishop f6, when we put the bishop here, it's going to be much more annoying for white. Rook a2 came just to control the d2 square, and now we start gaining some control over the position. Look at how black position is totally dominating over white position. Rook c2, and now simply b6. The idea, we want to blockade this guy. We want to defend this guy on c5 so much that we don't need to worry about the pawn anymore. This way we'll be much more free with the other pieces. We want to bring this guy here, and make all of our pieces as active as possible. After b6, the game continued with queen e1. He want to, move the queen around somehow, trying to play maybe some a5, I don't know, gain some counterplay, but we are slowly improving, attacking weaknesses so that we don't allow our opponent to have time to improve his position. Queen b1 trying to defend this guy, but white is only defending pawns and we're attacking them. Bishop f6, look, now thanks to the fact we have this guy here, we can simply do that and we don't need to worry about the pawn. That's why it's very important to overprotect your pieces so you get more freedom with the other pieces to hang around and don't be worried about that guy right there, right? Before, white's already very tired of being waiting, so he wants to somehow create some counterplay, and of course we're going to play c4, and now this guy right here is not only a weakness but also it's blockade on c3, so it will be a weakness almost forever. You have to defend it right now. That's why white played queen c1 and simply g5. We already have control over all that space in the board. We have this weakness here, and white will have to be defending this guy all the time. That's why we need to find another way to attack the position, and also this guy was hanging, so we simply defend it, right? h3 came from Evanson trying to control the g4 square for the future, and now bishop e5, slowly improving the position. We defend this guy here, we bring the possibility of bringing the queen to f6 to keep attacking the pawn on c3, and also this guy is defended, so now it will be easier to play on h5 plus g4. Now queen a1 came from white, trying to play a5, trying to create some counterplay, but as always as the queen is far from this guy here, we try to attack. That's why h5 came quite quickly. a5 from white, but it's too late for you. g4 is coming. If you take everything, queen is gonna get to g4, try to attack the king, and all of our pieces are very active. If you actually look at this guy, he's attacking here, yeah, but he's also looking very close to the king. This guy here is looking here, but also looking quite close to the king. This is very important to manage that your pieces do both things at the same time. After ab6, and bishop h4, white is trying to attack the rook, so if we move it, maybe the queen will get here, maybe you will get some counterplay. It's not going to be a huge counterplay anyway, but we are not going to allow that. f6, simply solid, defending the bishop, and this guy simply blocked again on h4. White has to come back to e1, trying to defend this guy, and now g3. So now you cannot move this guy, you cannot move this guy, you can barely move these two guys, and the position is getting totally dominated. Huge space advantage, huge control of the open file, huge potential attacking all the weakness, and this guy very sad on g1. Now queen e6 from Evanson, he was trying to activate, of course, the queen, and that's why we play queen c6. We want to play rook a8 and simply push back this guy all the way to a1. Queen a3, now b5. We defend this guy, and also, and very important, we are opening another way to attack this guy. This diagonal is now open, and now we have the possibility of bringing our queen all the way to e3 to keep attacking this guy. The game continue with queen b2, check, king h1, and now rook d1. We attack this guy right now that is not defended by anyone, and this way we are basically not allowing white to move anymore. Now rook c1 came, and queen e3. White tried to play rook a1 this way, maybe after take takes he want to activate, but now we bring the bishop to the diagonal that he wanted to use before when we played b5. Queen a2, trying to create some counterplay somehow, bringing the queen over there. Take, and before we are getting too anxious, we're going to play queen e2, attacking the rook. The rook doesn't have so many squares, he has to go to g1, and now bishop b6. We attack the rook again. Queen a6 only move, because if we take here, we have to be careful. After queen f6, there is maybe some possibility of giving checks and maybe saving the position, but we're not going to allow that. Queen e3, we defend the bishop, and we're threatening mate here on g1, so the queen doesn't have time to actually create any kind of counterplay. Rook f1 came, and now queen d3, again, threatening mate at this guy. Probably white should have played something like rook g1 right now, because if you take, maybe you can take on f6 and create some counterplay, but the position here was winning anyway in many different ways. So after queen d3, white tried to play queen b6, trying to hold this position, which was kind of very optimistic, and after queen e2, rook d1 was coming, and white had to resign. So very interesting game where we learn how to gain a lot of space, how to put pressure on weaknesses, how to change some of our useless pieces for very important pieces for our opponent, and how to dominate the position of your opponent in chess. I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you in the next one.